Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today is a very special day. Today is the day that we do the final Seattle Kraken expansion draft roster predictions. Now, every single NHL team has submitted their protection list, their unprotected players and their protected players to the National Hockey League and to the Seattle Kraken. And now it's up to the Seattle Kraken to decide what they will have in year one, what trades they will make, what deals they'll make, and what players they will select to represent the Seattle Kraken in the first year of their NHL franchise. But who do I see the Seattle Kraken picking in year one in this expansion draft, and who do I see your favorite team losing in this expansion draft as well? Watch till the end for all of my predictions, all of my picks, and hit that subscribe button for more hockey content. 60% of the people that are watching are not subscribed, so every bit helps, and we make daily hockey content here. If you like the expansion draft, if you like the Kraken, if you like all this craziness in the NHL, we're covering on this channel every single day, and we'd love to have you. Now, when it comes to the forwards itself for the Seattle Kraken, in year one of their franchise, I see the first line being James Van Riemsdyk on the left wing, centered by Max Domi of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and of course on the right wing with the trade with St. Louis, Vladimir Tarasenko on the right wing with all those power player responsibilities, hopefully for Seattle going back to his prime days without the shoulder surgeries. But this first line has a lot of potential, I think. Max Domi is the real center, I think, on this team. You'll see some good centers later on, but this is the first, I think, center that I think can really produce offensively. Max Domi, when he's in a defensive structure, hasn't really worked too well, but I think in a full offensive role in the first line, I think he can do relatively well and could get upwards of 50 points, I think, on a brand new team and an actual coach that could give him an opportunity. The only thing is Dave Haxtell. I'm not sure how that relationship would work and if he would give him the free reign. I hope he does, because I think Max Domi offensively still has a lot to produce, and James Van Riemsdyk and Vladimir Tarasenko have a lot of offense that they could produce as well if they're all healthy and all rolling. Now we're going to move on to the second line, though, for the Seattle Kraken. And this just gets even more exciting, I think, because after the first line, for a lot of my Seattle mock drafts, I thought that Seattle would kind of lose a little bit of an edge. But honestly, their second line could even be better than the first, especially when it comes to the overall game. When it comes to the Seattle second line, I have Nino Niederreiter on the left wing, exposed by the Carolina Hurricanes. I think Seattle will take him and use him at least in year one. And on the center spot, I see Yanni Gourde of the Tampa Bay Lightning being the pick from Seattle, from Tampa. I see it as an obvious choice, a great center who, especially as a second line guy, would really work. And I don't see him as the first line guy, really. I don't see as much offense in him to warrant that spot, but as a second line center, I think it's perfect, and I think Seattle will take advantage. And on the right wing, of course, you got Josh Bailey of the New York Islanders. He was also exposed in the expansion draft alongside Jordan Eberle from the Islanders, but I think Josh Bailey is a much more likely pick. Good cap hit for his production, and is a sweet top six forward. Could even get that first line spot instead of Vladimir Tarasenko. But now we're going to move on to the bottom six and move on to the third line here, and there are still some excellent players for Seattle that I think could have some major impacts. Do not count out this third line. Going on to the third, starting with the Pittsburgh Penguins, I see the left winger being Jason Zucker. And even though it might be a little bit much to pay us a forward like that on the third line, $5.5 million, I still think Seattle will take that risk because they might end up losing Niederreiter after year one. That would slot Zucker into that top six, and I think for Zucker, getting in a more offensive role would definitely help. But I think on the third line, he'll be on the first power play still and will be a major part of that, and will be a part of the offense mostly with Seattle. For the center spot, I see Alexander Kerfoot being taken from the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Seattle Kraken have both the option of Kerfoot and McCann, but we've heard a lot about how much the Seattle Kraken love Kerfoot, and as they should. He has so much versatility, so much great overall play, can play in the penalty kill, play in the power play, can play in all situations, and win faceoffs. There's a lot to like in Kerfoot's game. I think Seattle will use him greatly as a third-line center. Then on the right wing, I have actually Calle Jarnkrok from the Nashville Predators, who I thought in the past could maybe be acquired via trade, and there might still be a trade in the works maybe for Nashville to keep a guy like that, but Jarnkrok being exposed, I think, is a major miss by the Nashville Predators if there is no trade, because I think he's going to be used well in Nashville. Great overall creative forward who goes super underrated nowadays, had a great season with Nashville, and these past couple years have been great for him. I think in a third line spot, he might honestly be a little bit underrated in that spot, and could maybe push himself into the top six. Now we're going to move on to the fourth line, though, and there is still some quality options on this bottom bottom line that could really grind play out and make the other team have a lot harder of a job against Seattle. I think for the fourth line, it'll start with Jonas Donskoy of the Colorado Avalanche. A great pick here, and even though it is a little bit overpayment for Donskoy, I still think at that fourth line spot, he provides a lot of value, and he could also be a player that does go up to the third line potentially. We also have Ryan Donato on the center spot, a guy that was exposed by the San Jose Sharks. A little bit curious, I would say, that pick. I think San Jose should have protected him. I think Seattle will make the most of it, get him on that fourth line center spot. Maybe it'll be replaced by another guy that we'll mention later in the extras, but I do think Ryan Donato is a quality fourth line option. Then you have Nick Ritchie from the Boston Bruins, who I think is the best fourth liner here in terms of the fit. He is an excellent bottom six player and had a great season with Boston overall last year. They leave him exposed for some reason, which I am pretty surprised by, but I think Seattle will make the most of it, and as a fourth line, penalty kill, checking winger has a lot of value to add. But now we're going to go on to the extra forwards for the Seattle Kraken, and most of these guys are wingers, but some of these guys can also play center, maybe filling in for Ryan Donato especially. But when it comes to the extra forwards from the New York Rangers, I see Julian Gauthier being the pick there. From the Arizona Coyotes, I see Michael Bunting being the pick. From Nathan Bastian next from the New Jersey Devils, Adam Gaudette from the Chicago Blackhawks, and Dominic Cahoon from the Edmonton Oilers. Some pretty big picks here, and I do think that those extra forwards will get some ice time as well in year one for Seattle. But now moving on to the defense, the ever-important defense. We speculated in the past that Ron Francis will target defense with his Carolina Hurricanes past and how much he targeted defense there. And although I still think that will be the case, I do think it'll actually not be the strongest suit. I do think the forward group is actually the strongest thing for Seattle going into this year one if they decide to take the best players available. But when it comes to the defense, there will still be some quality options for them to go after. The first one, and the first two players actually, we're going to start with the first pair for Seattle in year one. To start out the franchise, I think the captain from the left side will be Mark Giordano. On the right side, Dylan DeMello of the Winnipeg Jets. I see this line getting pretty much everything out there. Giordano, even though he has decreased his productivity in these past two seasons, still is a quality top four defenseman and brings value, brings a lot of leadership. 37 years old and will be the captain there, I think, to start out in Seattle. And then you have Dylan DeMello, who's kind of in the middle of his prime right now. Kind of confusing why they would expose him in the Seattle expansion draft, if not just trade him for something at least. But I think DeMello is definitely one of the more underrated defensemen around the league. Can provide some top four value. Maybe might get a little bit shelled as a top line guy, but I think that's probably Seattle's best option without big trades. Now we're going to go on to the second pairing though, and this also provides some great value, I think, as well. Starting out on the left side from the Minnesota Wild, I have Carson Soucy from the Minnesota Wild. Of course, a solid top four defenseman, I think, can fill that role and will likely be exposed. And again, unless Minnesota makes a trade to keep him, I think Seattle will definitely end up taking him. Kalkinen from the Minnesota Wild is also an option in the goaltending side of things, but I think Soucy is just too good to pass up. Then you have Brendan Dillon as well on the right wing from the Washington Capitals. I see this being the Caps pick from Seattle, and it's a pretty solid one. Even though he makes a little bit too much, I would say, for his actual value, he still does provide some value. Is a great leader, great steadying force on that defense, and had a pretty decent year, I think, for Washington, even on the older side of things. And then we're going to go on to the final pair, the third pairing on this Seattle Kraken team. I have Colin Miller of the Buffalo Sabres sending on to the left side. On the right side, I have Troy Stecher from the Detroit Red Wings. Stecher was another confusing exposure, and I think Seattle will make the most of it. Troy Stecher was really good in a just overwhelming role in Detroit that just forced him into the Wolves, and he wasn't really that bad. He actually played pretty good at points, especially earlier in the season, and I think he could provide some good bottom pair value for the Seattle Kraken. Now, when it comes to the extra defensemen, I have Olli Maatta from the LA Kings, and last but not least, Sammy Vatanen from the Dallas Stars, who got bought out, got put on Dallas, and looked, I think he got waiver claimed by Dallas, and looked pretty good for the Stars overall. I think he could be an option for Seattle, especially as an eighth defenseman. Not too bad. Now, before we get into the goalies for the Seattle Kraken in year one, we have two different trades to announce involving the goaltending for Seattle. And the first one involves the Montreal Canadiens and the Seattle Kraken. And I proposed this earlier in my stream. And of course, subscribe if you haven't for streams and videos just like that. If you want to catch them live, put the notification bell as well on if you haven't. But I proposed this in the stream earlier, and I thought it was pretty interesting. What if Carey Price was picked by Seattle and then got traded back to the Montreal Canadiens? I think that is exactly what the Montreal Canadiens and the Seattle Kraken have in store. I see the Seattle Kraken picking Carey Price, retaining 50% on a deal, sending him back to Montreal, and maybe there's a three-team trade perhaps in the works if they can't actually do it one for one back and forth in terms of the rule book there. If they have to wait a few months for that to happen, maybe they can make a three-team trade happen there. But I do think Montreal still wants to have Carey Price, and I think Seattle wants to do something with that situation. I think they want to get Carey Price, but also maximize that value there. And it works for both teams. Seattle will get some pretty big picks back in exchange, and Carey Price would be at a 5.25 cap hit from Montreal back with the Habs, which would make their situation a lot more manageable and would make them get a lot more free agents and a lot more potential additions. I think for both teams it makes a lot of sense, and Carey Price would still stay as a result a Montreal Canadien. But now we're going to move on to the second trade, and a trade that'll actually factor into Seattle's year one goaltending tandem. We're now going to move on to the Vancouver Canucks and the Seattle Kraken. A potential rivalry maybe in the books, but I think they'll get one last trade before they end up facing each other. I think this will involve Braden Holtby going to the Seattle Kraken, but not so fast. I don't think the Seattle Kraken will take him upright, but I do think Vancouver wants to get that contract off the books and wants to get some cap space to sign guys like Pettersson, sign guys like Hughes eventually. And I do think when it comes to Seattle, there'll have to be still some salary retained, because I don't think Seattle wants to take that full salary and that full cap hit on, but I do still see there being some salary retained. Vancouver giving some picks to make Seattle take Braden Holtby and not take anybody else, like a Matthew Heimer, let's say. But Braden Holtby will stay in Seattle and will be likely their year one starter. Now, I guess I exposed it a little bit there, but when it comes to the goaltending for the Seattle Kraken in year one, I see the big tandem being Chris Driedger and Braden Holtby in net. I think it'll pretty much be like a 41-41 gameplay kind of situation where there's kind of fringe starters on both sides. They aren't guaranteed the starter spot, but either one could end up winning it. And when it comes to the backup, I have Joey Daccord of the Ottawa Senators. But that is pretty much it when it comes to the Seattle Kraken roster predictions. I see this team being honestly really, really solid. If Braden Holtby can have a rebound year, that defense can just stay strong. I think that forward group, if you have some rebound years and guys like Tarasenko and James Van Riemsdyk, could really, really do well. I mean, not James Van Riemsdyk, Max Domi. I think they have real potential to be one of the better goal-scoring teams in the NHL and be one of the better overall teams in the NHL. If their goaltending stays strong, I could see it being a really strong team. And especially in the Pacific Division, they could pretty easily make the playoffs. I think that's their plan, and I think they probably will finish 4th or 3rd in the Pacific with this current roster. But that'll be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy the Seattle Kraken mock roster, make sure that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you agree and disagree with my picks, and who do you see the Seattle Kraken taking from your favorite NHL team? Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you share the Seattle Kraken expansion draft picks with your friends. Get it out there, boys. And click this card for all my Seattle Kraken and mock content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video or stream. Goodbye.